Hello, my name is Kayla Knoll, and my group mate, Amy Mew, and I will be discussing visual impairments in this presentation. We will be reviewing the varying degrees of visual impairments that students can have, things that teachers need to know about visual impairments in students, and strategies for teachers to use when teaching students with visual impairments.
The organization Project Ideal, whose goal is informing and designing education for all learners, defines visual impairment as any condition that impacts an individual's ability to successfully complete the activities of everyday life. It should also be noted that many students with visual impairments also have additional disabilities or impairments. Project Ideal explains three classifications where individuals with visual impairments can fall. The classification defines the levels of impairment based on their levels of functioning vision. Students with visual impairments can fall into low vision, functionally blind, or totally blind. Students with low vision use their vision as a primary sensory channel. Students who are functionally blind have limited vision and can use it for functional tasks, but need tactile and auditory channels for learning. Students who are totally blind do not have any use of vision for tasks and rely heavily on tactile and auditory channels for learning and performing functional tasks. Students with visual impairments fall on a wide spectrum. There are several different medical conditions that can cause visual impairments, including glaucoma, retinopathy of prematurity, cataracts, retinal detachment, macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, cortical visual impairment, infection, and trauma. There are additional visual problems that can affect a student's vision, such as sensitivity to light or glare, blind spots in vision, or problems with contrast or colors. There are so many variations of visual impairments a student can face that educators must adjust their instruction based on each individual. There is no one-size-fits-all for instructing students with visual impairments successfully. Children with visual impairments were actually one of the first children with disabilities to receive public education. The first school for blind children in the United States was established in 1829, and the first public school class in general education was established in 1900. IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, defines visual impairments, including blindness, as an impairment in vision that, even with correction, adversely affects a child's educational performance. The term included both partial sight and blindness. Students with visual impairments are one of the smallest percentages that are served under IDEA. They are lumped in with deaf blindness and traumatic brain injury and account for less than 0.5% of students that IDEA served in 2015 and 2016. IDEA also reported that 67% of students with visual impairments spend most of their school day in general education classrooms. This is why it is so important for all types of educators to understand the warning signs and abilities of students with visual impairments.
There are several signs of possible vision impairments to look out for. These include constant eye rubbing, chronic eye redness, light sensitivity, squinting, the closing of one eye, misaligned eyes, poor focus or trouble following objects, trouble seeing objects at a distance, or trouble reading. Educators of the blind and visually impaired face the challenge of teaching skills that are generally taught via sight. This loss of incidental learning means that students with visual impairments are unable to learn through observation, modeling, and visual imitation and feedback. Learning media assessments help determine the sensory channels through which a child learns and to access reading and writing skills.
A study from 2012 on alternate accessibility for students with visual impairments identified 5 possible accommodations teachers can use in the classroom. These accommodations include differentiating presentation of materials, time, setting, response adjustments, and additional aids and supports for the students. One great technique that educators can utilize are haptics-based apps. An example of haptics-based technology is the small vibrations that your smartphone makes while in use. The different lengths and repetitions of the vibrations, accompanied by audio, are helpful for students with varying levels of visual impairments.
An example of a haptics-based app that can be used in the classroom is an app that allows students to explore a plant cell. The students would use a Navant haptic controller to interact with a 3D model of the plant cell. The user has to use the controller to feel where the cell is and what organelles they are interacting with. This makes the structure of the plant cells more accessible for totally blind students. The app features an on-screen version of the plant cell that appears while the student interacts via the controller. The plant cell features 3D organelles that are textured and can be more easily seen by students who are legally blind or with low vision. The student can also click on the organelles and hear what they would be looking at. Haptics-based apps are just one interesting way to create inclusive lessons for students with visual impairments. This sort of technology may not always be available to every classroom, but there are other techniques that teachers can use to differentiate their instruction for students with visual impairments. Teachers can use substitution by replacing pictures with tangible objects. They can use enhancements by enhancing size and color of text or images. They can alter the layout of presentations or worksheets to make them easier to read. And lastly, they can change in the way that they respond in communicating with the student. There are lots of different assistive technologies to aid students with visual impairments. Braille translations are useful for students with visual impairments and can be used in a variety of ways. They can be used to convert printed text into Braille or vice versa. There are also Braille note takers that can connect to a printer to print notes from written word to Braille. In addition to the different ways that Braille can be used, educators can utilize devices like screen readers that convert text on screens to speech, or screen enlargement software that can be used to make images and text on computers bigger. For more information on students with visual impairments, feel free to browse through our cited resources.